Thank you all. And now we're on a roll call.
Excellent.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Mashburn,
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chair Winternitz,
Here.
Board Member Hume,
This is his alternate, Rebecca Sloan, Chief of Staff for District 5.
I have as alternate as Don Natoli.
Done it,
Supervisor-
no longer.
No, he's our alternate.
What did-
Yeah,
Just
okay.
for that.
Oh, just for that.
I'm not sure, Nicole, I'm not sure how to do that.
Um,
Did you want to elaborate on that? I don't have you as an alternate. I don't know how that works.
There's no need for me to vote. I just wanted to acknowledge that our office is being represented, and Supervisor Hume now has a standing conflict with Regional San, for which he's chair. And former Supervisor Don Natoli will be attending as often as he can and as his alternate.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Mhm.
Supervisor Burgess. Supervisor Patty.
Present.
Here. Supervisor Provenza. Absent. Board Member Benson.
Here.
Board Member Vogel. Here. Board Member Dang. Here. And Board Member Matsumoto, absent. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, ma'am. And by way of introductions, we have a brand new board member. I watched him get his sworn in just 5 minutes ago.
Hi, Stephen Benson. I'm actually backing up Michelle Peralt today, who'll be the regular attendee, but I'm a backup, so you'll probably see me every now and again. I've been with the Department of Finance for about 18 years. So just happy to be here today. First time at this board meeting, so looking forward to learning. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, sir. All right.
It looks like Diane Burgess came in.
Oh, okay.
Diane, are you here?
I am.
Welcome. Good morning. We're gonna check.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, now we have 7. Can I also ask if any liaison advisors are here? So Mike Valenis, is he? Yes. Okay, Mike Valenis, are you with us today? Okay, he's muted, so I'm gonna check you in as here. Marge is not with us. Okay, thank you all. I am done. I apologize.
No, that's all right. Keep us on track.
Mhm.
All right, that brings us to public comment. Do we have anybody online or anybody in the room who wishes to address this board on any item that's not on the agenda? See any in the room? All right, so that brings us to the consent calendar, which is an action item.
Mhm. And we won't be able to vote on the October meeting. We don't have the same.
We don't have
people
the
here.
same people.
Yeah.
All right,
So we need to pull the October meeting from the consent.
Yeah.
calendar.
You have to find some way to take
all
care
right,
of
so we need to pull everybody so on item number 4, the consent calendar, the approval of the October board meeting item is going to be pulled. Do I have any public comment on the consent calendar? Or any comment online? See none. I'd be looking for a motion on the consent calendar.
Moved.
Moved
Second.
and seconded. I guess we have to do a roll call.
We sure do. Chair Mashburn,
All right.
Vice Chair Winternitz.
Yes.
I have Hume absent. Supervisor Burgess.
Yes.
I have Supervisor Patty.
Yes.
Yeah. Supervisor Provenza absent. Board Member Benson.
Aye.
Aye. Board Member Udang. Aye. And then we have an absent. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. The motion carried.
All right, thank you. That brings us to our executive officer.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Executive Officer's report can be found on page 11 of your packet. Start with a warm welcome back to Brenda Lusk, our administrative manager, who was out for maternity leave for the last 6 months, welcoming her son into the family. So it's great to have her back. A big thank you to Jessica Adel, who stepped in and played that role for 6 months. Did a great job, kept the trains on track. So Jessica really did a wonderful job, and it's great to have Brenda back and be fully staffed again. So I also just want to point out 2 publications I could share around a little bit. The Equity Year in Review, CNRA put this out. This is all the work that all 26 entities within CNRA have done to increase equity throughout our system. It's got a nice little write-up on the Delta Conservancy as well and the work that we did. So it's a great document. You can find it online, but I'll just set it out there if anybody wants to flip through it. The other document I want to share is that Restore the Delta put out a rice cultivation handbook for the Delta. It's really well done, and it really supports all the efforts that we've done in trying to promote. You recall, we funded the Nature Conservancy project to try to enroll 5,000 acres in rice cultivation. This does a really nice job of really comparing the economics of corn and other commodities to rice in the Delta. And we're working with them right now to do a 2-page summary. It's a little more, handoutable to actual farmers. So there's a couple extra copies here if anybody's interested. You can also find that on. All right, moving on. Form 700 compliance, just a couple days left. I think most folks have. If you haven't, please do. And if you have any questions, please let us know. The Delta Drought Response Program the Oversight Committee continues to complete the analysis that will go into the final report. And we anticipate providing that final report an overview of the program for the 2023 water year at the July board meeting. Next up, the state budget update. There's really not much to update. Like the rest of the world, we're all waiting for the May revise. We're not expecting much change, but we've heard that it could be rough. In the absence of additional funding and sort of still hoping for a bond, we've turned our focus to quite a bit of effort really trying to find federal funding to fill the gap, continue our administrative updates. Just a note there about new monthly reporting requirements. Also that we have submitted packages to fill a vacant office technician, environmental scientist position, and 2 limited term positions, or maybe 2 limited term positions. So very important to try to get that staffing squared away in the event there's a hiring freeze. And then there's a note there about all the contracts and invoices processed since the last. Moving on, the Delta Conservancy request for proposal to continue the planning for Frank's Track. That due date for the RFP was March 21st, and we received 1 proposal. So that makes the review process fairly simple. But we will be reviewing that, hopefully executing that agreement relatively soon and starting that planning process hopefully before the next board.
I have a question there.
Sure.
What is the funding source? So this is the proposal, right? And then who would engage in implementation?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant to mention that. So Department of Fish and Wildlife provided $150,000 in an interagency agreement to us to actually solicit support and run the process. So once we get the contractor on board, we will actually start to do outreach to the people who were involved in the previous planning effort, bring in more, and then start the process of essentially trying to redefine the project in a way that's realistic financially.
Okay, because that's an expensive project. Anyhow, that's, I think, wise of the Department of Fish and Wildlife to work with the Delta Conservancy on this.
It is. Yeah, we worked for quite a while with somebody online.
Mike? Do you have something to say, Mike?
Okay, moving on. Nutria eradication. In the packet, you have the standard update. The update's not very specific about what's going on in the Delta and Sassoon. And I actually did not get an update on anything specific about additional sightings or of nutria in the Delta or Sassoon. Anybody else is aware? Or,
I don't have a specific update, but I will just say the Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team, we just recruited a member of the nutria eradication team to come to our meetings regularly. They had been kind of understaffed and not able to do that. So hopefully we can get an update from them soon.
All right, moving on to Delta Science. The fish-friendly farming program is now complete. Laurel is here and Rachel are going to give us an in-depth presentation on that later. Looking forward to that. Conservancy staff continue to co-lead the Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee, the DPIC Restoration Subcommittee. At the first meeting of the 2024 on March 7th. The link there, you can find the notice and I believe the notes. The meetings focused on impacts, risks, and management of invasive aquatic vegetation and tidal wetland restoration projects. And also just note, staff if you recall, we had the Delta Restoration Forum at the Ride Hotel in November. Staff is working on compiling all of that information, all the posters, and putting it online so that anybody who wasn't there or anyone can have access to a snapshot of all the restoration that's going on. Continuing on, Rachel just mentioned the DISC team, the Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team. That's facilitated by Rachel and co-led by DWR and Stewardship Council and Department of Fish and Wildlife. They had their first meeting on February 20th, and that included an update of the California Invasive Species Advisory Committee, that's a statewide committee, and report out on the Invasive Species Symposium, which we've talked about previously, and then an update on the Nutria Genetics team. So the next section says that Conservancy staff attended the 2024 State of the Estuary Conference on March 12th in Oakland. Unfortunately, that conference was canceled at the very last minute. It was some sort of issue with the facility being habitable, and literally at the last minute, it was canceled. So tragic, really, given the level of planning and effort that goes into putting that on, and what a resource it is for everyone who works in the system. But we had 5 posters really, that we were going to present there, and we've actually put them up on the wall. You can see the current state of science on Delta soils, current state of science on Delta soil subsidence and emissions. There was one on the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program, one on our Community Enhancement Grant Program, and out there's one on nature-based solutions, wetland restoration. And then there was one teaming with the Stewardship Council on interagency collaboration to achieve Delta Plan restoration targets. So great work, beautiful posters, really informative, and hopefully you'll get a chance to check them out sometime. Moving on to media note mentions, just 3 California local. Published an article about the 10 state conservancies and how they protect California's natural beauty. That's a great article that just kind of gave a nice showcase for all 10 Delta conservancies, of which we are one. The Daily Republic reported that the board approved the funding for the Suisun City fishing dock planning project. And then the Lodi News Sentinel wrote about the March groundbreaking for the Asian American Heritage Park in Isleton. And you'll see that in the packet later on. We had one board directive, Supervisor Mashburn, after the Delta Invasive Species Plan, this team presentation, suggested that we look to create a public outreach component for the invasive species work and take that out to public venues in the Delta to help locals better understand what invasives are out there, what they can look for, and what they can do if they see them. So we've started to work with the RCDs, particularly the Suisun Marsh RCD, to look for places that we could actually engage and provide that information.
You know, I'll help you with that.
Okay.
Got a lot of engagement going on in Solano County right now.
I bet you do. So there was no correspondence, and with that, that's the end of the program section. Happy to take any questions and then turn it over to Jessica to do the budget.
Just a quick comment. I understand the interagency ecological program is coming up with their annual program. Those posters would make great materials.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, our budget expenditure report is agenda item 5, attachment 2. Sorry, I'm Jessica Petal, the administrative supervisor at the Conservancy. Not a whole lot of excitement to report. It seems like we don't get any expenditures till almost the end of the year because most of our expenditures are interagency. And I laugh because I look at our communications and we've only spent like 16%. It's because CalNet has not billed us for our cell phones since July. So I just have no excuse for that. There will be some savings in line item row 9 and 10 because they are travel and training budget items, and due to the budget freeze, we have not any travel and training since December 12th, I think, when the budget took place. So those funds will likely go back to the state to help with our deficit. And nothing unusual going on. We're just proceeding with our budget this year. Any questions?
Do you need room? Any questions online? Any hands raised?
That concludes. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to ecosystem restoration and climate adaptation grant program update.
Great, that's me. Good morning, board members. I'm Angie Shakya, an environmental scientist here at the Delta Conservancy. I will be presenting agenda item 6, the Ecosystem Restoration and Climate Adaptation, or ERCA, grant program update. That's found on page 18 of your board packet. So at the bottom of the page here, you'll see a table that has a breakdown of the funding sources that make up the ERCA grant program, along with their various funding availabilities. These include Prop 1, Climate Access and Restoration, or CAR, and the Nature-Based Solutions Wetland Restoration, or NBS programs. All of these, they each have only a small amount of funding remaining, and this is for amendments and as-needed changes. On to start with an update on our Nature-Based Solutions funding program. All funding has been awarded to 4 separate projects, and 2 have executed grant agreements, and we expect to execute the remaining 2 before the next board meeting. The WebTrack agreement with Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, which includes both the rice conversion on WebTrack and the wetland restoration on WebTrack projects. That one continues to make progress on planning. And Delta Conservancy staff will provide a more detailed informational update at the May board meeting for you all, including specific plans for CEQA compliance and implementation. And then we anticipate bringing CEQA responsible agency findings and consideration for implementation funding for the RICE project to you all in July. And so the Ecosystem Restoration and Climate Adaptation Grant Program now has 17 active projects. Detailed updates for each of these can be found on starting on page 21 of your packet. And one brief highlight, the Knightson Wetland Restoration Planning Project, which the Delta Conservancy awarded Prop 1 funds for in 2018, is in its final year. The grantee, East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy, recently secured $9.7 million from CDFW's Watershed Grants Program. And so we're excited to see this project move forward towards completion. Then, since the last board meeting, Proposition 1 project has closed. A project summary and photos for the Stone Lakes Restoration Planning Project can be found on page 36. And under this grant, Ducks Unlimited and their project partners successfully completed planning for nearly 300 acres of ecosystem restoration and 20 acres of habitat enhancement for land both in and around the Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge. Grant funded activities for this one included the development of 90% design plans, permit applications, CEQA documents, and an adaptive management plan. So that project team is in the process of securing implementation funding, with implementation anticipated to begin as soon as spring 2025. So that wraps it up. Full final reports for any of our closed projects can be requested by contacting the Prop 1 Grants contact on page 30. And thank you all for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
That's a question. On the wetland restoration project on Staten Island, conversion 426 acres of existing corn to wetlands. That comes out to about $15,800 an acre. Is that the current cost of conversion from existing crop to a wetland?
There's, in that grant, they're finishing their planning as well. They're doing community outreach and engagement, and then also the construction of the wetlands. So it's not just the straight conversion of the construction costs for the wetlands. There's more parts to it.
It's more,
There's more than just the construction. It's the community
Yeah.
outreach
The
engagement.
construction is absolutely the lion's share, and it is expensive. We see ranges anywhere from 5 to 15,000 per acre. It's, yeah, it's,
I thought that was a little high, but
that is on
I
the high
don't know
end.
the cost.
It depends on the type of equipment they gotta bring out, Leo, just a dozer. To run a dozer for a day, if you just wanted to rent the equipment, not including the guy running it, the piece of equipment is $800 a day. So you can imagine that, and that's just for the dozer. If you gotta move the earth and move,
Yeah.
move it around somewhere, or truck it or do anything else, it isn't cheap. They get you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions online? See any, no? All right, well, that brings us then to the, thank you, man. That brings us to the Community Enhancement Grant Program update.
Good morning, board members. My name is Maya Garrett, and I'm the Conservancy's Ecological and Community Programs Analyst. I'm here to present Agenda Item 7, the Community Enhancement Grant Program Update, which can be found on page 39 of your agenda packet. The Community Enhancement Program is funded through a $12 million allocation for Proposition 68 and 2 general fund allocations of Climate Access and Resource, or CAR funds totaling $11.4 million. The program accepts applications on an ongoing basis and is actively seeking proposals. At present, we are aware of several applicants working on their proposals. Currently, there's $3.7 million available in Proposition 68 funding and under $20,000 available in CAR funds. However, we are considering awarding $13,000 in Proposition 68 funds today. We currently have 12 executed and 1 awarded community enhancement grants. The projects are detailed on pages 40 through 45 of your agenda packet. But to provide a highlight, the Asian American Heritage Park held a groundbreaking ceremony earlier this month, and work is commencing on construction of the project. There's a picture of the groundbreaking ceremony in your agenda packet. In addition, we have 1 proposal for consideration today, Agenda Item 8, the Isleton Museum. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
All right, so on number 7, do we have any questions from anybody in the room? Seeing none, anybody online? Okay. Well, I think that brings us, that was not an action item, so I think that brings us to 8, which is the consideration of the award for the same community enhancement program for Isleton Museum in the Bing Kong Tong Building Phase 2. I think you have that one as well, Mr. Garrett.
All right, so in follow-up to the Community Enhancement Grant Program update, I'm pleased to present to the board for consideration a recommendation to award Proposition 68 funding for the Isleton Museum in the Bing Kong Tong Building Phase 2 project to the Isleton Museum. This item can be found on pages 47 through 50 of your agenda packet. Conservancy staff recommends that the board approve up to $13,442 in grant funding for this proposal. The purpose of this project is to obtain 4 pedestal covers to protect museum displays, 20 signs mounted on foam board to provide interpretation for museum exhibits and wayfinding throughout the museum, and the conservation, cleaning, and delivery of a Chinese banner from the 1930s. This project is an expansion of an existing Delta Conservancy project, which was funded by the Delta Conservancy in March 2022 to purchase display cases for museum artifacts. This project is not considered under CEQA. The first phase of the project received significant community support, including letters from the Isleton Elementary School and the Isleton Chamber of Commerce. Our staff is pleased to recommend this project for board approval. There's suggested motion language at the bottom of the agenda for your consideration. But before we proceed, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Questions?
Just provide just a little bit of context. This is the first time that we've had a project that has finished under budget and then wanted to spend that budget on something that really wasn't envisioned by the original. So it kind of put us in this position of developing a policy to handle that. So this is a very small award. But you can imagine something like this happening for a much larger project in the future. So we wanted to set ourselves up. So again, so the idea was we welcome it. It's a consistent, it's a good project, but let's go back and do the review process that we would have done with the board to approve the project to move forward rather than try to do it for something that wasn't envisioned in the original proposal. Just a little bit of context that you may see more of these in the future. This is a small one, but it's just a new policy that we established in that situation.
Anybody online have any questions on that item? No? All right. Well, this one is an action item, so I'd be looking for a motion.
Would you like the language?
Pardon me, ma'am?
Would you like the motion language?
Sure.
All right. So the suggested motion language is move that the board award funding up to $13,442 to the Isleton Museum from the Proposition 68 Community and Economic Enhancement Grant Program for the Isleton Museum in the Tong Building Phase 2 project.
So moved.
Easy on me.
It looks like I had a second online up there. There we go. All right, so then we have to do a roll call.
I have Board Member Udang as your motion and Supervisor Burgess as our second. Chair Mashburn,
All right.
Vice Chair Winternitz.
Aye.
Supervisor Hume. I'm sorry, Supervisor Burgess,
Yes.
Board Member Benson,
Yes.
Board Member Vogel,
Aye.
and Board Member Udang.
Aye.
Still 7 ayes, the motion carries.
All right.
Supervisor Tom Patty says yes too.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Tom. My sheet is a mess. Supervisor. Thank you.
Sorry, Tom.
Only Diane.
Out of sight and out of mind. I get it.
Well, you know, Diane, you have our whole screen right now. I don't know why. So you're huge up there. And Tom, you're gonna have to push her out a bit.
That brings us to outcomes and lessons learned through implementation of the fish-friendly farming program in the Delta. Doc, you're up.
Good morning, board members. My name is Rachel Wigginton. I'm a senior environmental scientist with the Conservancy, and today I'm joined by Laurel Marcus, founder and current science director with the California Land Stewardship Institute. So we're really excited today to present a report on the outcomes and lessons learned from implementing the fish-friendly farming program in the Delta. The staff report for this item begins on page 51 of your board packets. So I'll now turn it over to Laurel to give a little bit of background about the fish-friendly farming program at large.
Good morning. Nice to be here. I've been working on the fish-friendly farming program in California since 1997. We started in Sonoma and Mendocino counties, and we did this through a collaboration with growers. And the growers wanted a program that put all of the environmental regulations and requirements into one workbook and farm plan template. So we're talking about Clean Water Act, Port of Cologne Act, Endangered Species Act, Fish and Game Code, Water Code, all of those different things. Because it was overwhelming to them to try to figure out what in the world they were supposed to do with all these different regulations. The program went from Sonoma, Mendocino, where it's still quite popular, to Napa County in 2000, and we have about 95% of all the vineyards in Napa County in the program. In 2008, it went to the Sierra Foothills and portions of Santa Clara and Kern counties, and then the Delta in 2017, which you're going to hear a little bit more about. Currently, we have 210,000 acres enrolled in the program. The program is the regulatory compliance program in Napa and Sonoma valleys and their watersheds. It also can provide that in the Delta, working with the water quality coalitions. And it's very likely it's going to provide this same function in Mendocino and the rest of Sonoma County in 2025. So it went from a good idea, and now that good idea is being implemented. And we greatly appreciate your agency in helping us set this up in the Delta.
Yeah, so given the success of the fish-friendly farming program in other portions of California that Laurel has just described, CLSI and the Conservancy were really interested in bringing this program to the Delta. So in 2017, the Delta Conservancy funded award Proposition 1-1505, which was a planning grant to develop a fish-friendly farming certification program for the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. During the work on that planning grant, the Conservancy led a grant application written in collaboration with CLSI to the State Water Resources Control Board's non-point source pollution control program. It's a 319 program, and that was to implement this program in the Delta. And in 2020, pardon me, a grant was executed for administration through the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board to implement the program in the Delta. The broad goal of this implementation was to enroll 10,000 acres of farmland and certify at least 50% of those acres in the Delta. The program involves defining best management practices and also implementation projects, which are both intended to improve water quality in Delta waterways. I'm now going to turn it back over to Laurel to discuss the outreach that was performed to achieve this level of enrollment in the Delta.
Well, first, let me start out by saying that whenever you start something new in the farming community, it takes a while to become something that is interesting and trusted. We started our outreach to growers by working with the farm bureaus. We work with Farm Bureau quite a bit in the state. Cooperative Extension, the Water Quality Coalitions. We did direct mailings, workshops, and meetings. We didn't get a lot of people that way, partly because we were all shut down in COVID and we had to do this over Zoom, which is not a popular concept with a lot of people. But we also got a lot of help from Conservancy staff who contacted some of the very large conservation owners, MWD and the Nature. And once we informed the Nature Conservancy about the program, they were very interested in it. Then we also started to advertise the fact that we had project funding as part of this grant, and we got a lot more feedback when that happened. And so we were able to enroll actually a little bit more than the 10,000 acres. So now that, we have these great signs that we're going to try to get all of the folks that just got certified to put up, because that tends to spur a lot of questions as well, interest.
Yep, so once these farms have been enrolled through that outreach program that Laurel described, CLSI works with the farmers to develop farm conservation plans. And these farm plans include the best management practices that I mentioned earlier, which were developed in collaboration with a Delta-specific technical advisory committee. CLSI works with the enrollees to catalog the best management practices that they're already performing on their farms, as well as the actions that are needed to sort of continue and improve the water quality practices on their farms. Some examples of the best management practices that are included in the Delta farm plans are keeping ditches vegetated, and that helps retain sediment on the site, so it limits runoff. Making sure that any wellheads that exist on the site are protected, not irrigating directly after the application of pesticides, and using integrated pest management practices to control pests on the site, to limit pesticide application. So as Laurel mentioned, this grant also includes $200,000 for the implementation of water quality improvement projects on the different farms. And these water quality improvement projects were again reviewed and approved by that technical advisory committee. And we were able to fund 2 different projects through this grant work. The first was a water recirculation pump that was installed on rice fields on Staten Island. And this project will improve water quality by allowing water to be recirculated among the different rice fields. And this allows extra time for herbicides and pesticides that are in the water to be exposed to sun, which can break them down and thus limit off-site transport. And interestingly, these pumps will also eventually recirculate water through the wetlands that are going to be restored through MBS 04s on Staten Island, which we just discussed. And that will provide additional water quality benefits from the project. So that's pretty exciting to see the nexus of some of these things coming together. A second project that we were able to fund through the Fish Friendly Farming Program was on 3D farms on Robert Island in the Southern Delta. And this was a project to install a hedgerow of native plants. And the goal of this, they're currently very small, but eventually as they mature, those will provide a windbreak and that will reduce return flows, so keeping pesticides and herbicides from blowing into the waterways. And we also were able to provide cost shares. We didn't pay for the whole thing, but part of the payment for the installation of a water conserving irrigation on the site. And you can see images of these projects in your board packet beginning on page 55. Once farm plans are complete, the process includes one or more third-party certifying groups, which CLSI goes through the process of training about the program. And these folks will visit the sites to ensure that the farm plans capture all the needed best management practices and that it's realistic to actually implement those on the farms. And after that initial certification, growers will then complete an online self-assessment each year. And then after 5 years, there's an actual recertification site visit where those third-party certifiers again assess the farm plan implementation and see if any updates are needed to the farm plans. So this has obviously been a really interesting and exciting program for us. And I think we have some interesting lessons learned that we can take away from our work with CLSI and others. So we've learned a lot from collaborating with both other state agencies, the State Water Resource Control Board, the Central Valley Water Quality Control Board, NGOs like CLSI, and then also really getting to know more of the local growers through this program. We have a lot of folks who are enrolled in our drought response program, and some of those folks actually are also now enrolled in the Fish Friendly Farming Program. So we're starting to, I think, really make some relationships and connections with farmers in the community through these various programs. And when I was attending the certification visits and talking with farmers, they felt really positively about their interactions with CLSI, stating that they made the process really straightforward and easy for them. And I think having some of these very well articulated best management practices helps the farmers have confidence that they can actually implement these farm plans and succeed with this program. I don't know if you have any other lessons learned you want to share, Laurel.
Well, I learned a great deal about farming in the Delta. I know about farming all over the place, but not in the Delta. It's quite different. And so we had to really interact quite a bit with the growers in order to figure out, what do you need to do to reduce the transport of pesticides into the water, because that is what most of the water quality problems are around, is things like that. We recently received a block grant for the SWEET program that you might know about that, and the HSP program, Healthy Soils program. And because we had been doing all this work in the Delta, we received a lot of applications from this area. So SWEET funds things like energy and water conservation. And then HSP funds things like cover crops, hedgerows, different ways to increase carbon sequestration, as well as IPM and, the general health of the soil. So I think that it's been very, we're making inroads into the community of Delta farmers, and a few more, types of projects and workshops. And I think we would have more people that would want to sign up for Fish Friendly. And what we have found in other places is when you get a certain percentage of the community that's enrolled, it's sort of a little club. And people are very proud of the fact that they're certified. And it's an independent certification by government regulators. So it's not a greenwashing type of program. And they will do a lot of other things. We've been very successful at having all kinds of water conservation projects done in Sonoma and Mendocino County, water infrastructure, a lot of different things. Wildlife habitat restoration, we've done huge projects on the Napa River and the Russian River. So we're hoping that in the future, we can move towards that same model in the Delta, because I think that the farmers are just a little shell-shocked by all the different things in the Delta. It's like, oh no, not another meeting, is sort of what they would tell us. But I also want to say that it's been a real pleasure to work with Rachel. She's a great collaborator and, you know, she is very organized and she kept everything going and it's worked out really well. So I would like to compliment your staff.
Well, thanks so much, Laurel. I really appreciate that. That's very kind. It's been great to work with CLSI as well. So we've obviously been working on the fish-friendly farming program for a while, so happy to take any questions from the board that you might have.
Questions? Go ahead, sir.
I have a comment, question, I guess. So I was always under the impression that if you recirculate the water that contains contaminants and you reuse that water, you're just concentrating the contaminants in that water. So it was educational to me to learn that you can do that, but it'll actually break down the contaminants.
Yes. Sunlight makes a
Yeah.
big difference.
So maybe I'm the only one who doesn't know that, but if I'm not, that's knowledge that should be disseminated, you know?
We had a workshop together with also the co-op extension folks who are very good about using recirculation pumps in rice on Staten Island. And I don't know how many growers we had, maybe 20 came. It was very well attended. And this was all presented and discussed about how this was a way to reduce your pollution load that could be going, you know, into a delta.
And you have about 415,000 acres in the Delta, right? So are there going to be additional incentives that you see coming around to try and enroll this other Delta acreage?
The fish-friendly farming program?
Yeah.
So the State Water Resource Control Board does run their 319 grant program every year. And so there's potential to apply for that funding again. And the Conservancy is open to pursuing more funding for the program. And we're keeping our eyes open for other opportunities. And then I don't know if you have things you're looking out for, Laurel.
I always look at grants with an idea of, we have a very large database that comes from all of these growers. I mean, there's thousands in our program. And some of them want to do, you know, like a stream length long restoration project, for example. So we can pull those people all together and apply for money with them. I'm not sure exactly how this would work in the Delta, what types of changes they might want to, you know, work together to make, like a whole island might, something of that nature. But we certainly would look around for project money for them. So there's lots of different ways for us to do that.
And then my last question, does this program actually reduce regulation for farmers in the Delta? It does.
Well, to give a more clear example from like Napa County, the TMDLs, you know what those are, okay? They are implemented by having us prepare your farm plan, getting it certified and implementing it. And then there's a little bit of monitoring that the regional board does. That same idea is probably going to happen in Region 1, which is the North Coast water quality region. In the Delta, what it does is we coordinate with the Water Quality Coalition to give, because they have to report data, so we give them the data from our sites. But should there be an exceedance, they go upstream and look at everybody in the drainage of that exceedance. If you're in our program, you don't have to do a lot of work to address the exceedance. So it gives an off-ramp for sort of the worst part of the regulation, which is when there's a problem. Because we're looking at all of their chemical use in great detail and recommending that they not use certain things that are in the TMDLs as problems. So yeah, it does get it done.
Thank you, Liv. Any other questions in the room? Cindy, any online? Any there either? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you
very much.
Thank you, Laura. Sure.
That brings us to the Delta Adapts Draft Adaptation Plan Overview.
Okay. Morning.
Thanks for having me. I'm Morgan Chow. I'm a planner at the Stewardship Council, and I'm going to be sharing an overview of our Delta Adapts, our draft adaptation plan content, and also be just giving the Stewardship Council update for Mandible after that. So for those that aren't familiar, the Delta Adapts is our climate adaptation initiative we've been leading since 2018, which aims to really better understand specific risks faced by the Delta and to propose strategies to prepare accordingly. We are really excited about it. It's really the first of its kind for the region that cuts across multiple sectors. Others have been done, adaptation strategies have been done more at the local level or on like single topics like water supply or ecosystem, but we do feel it's the first at this scale that addresses multiple topics. And the forthcoming adaptation plan really does show, I think, how far we've come and what we've learned through the process. It is really aiming to be a framework for adaptation for actions that we want to happen across the region. It's the result of conversations over many years with a very diverse group of interests that I'll talk more about. It recognizes a lot of the work that's already happening, like some of what presented in the Delta, but then also recognizing the need to really amplify it, be innovative, and continue to prioritize adaptation. It's being led by the Stewardship Council. We were created to help safeguard Delta assets, and climate adaptation really is critical to our agency's mission. So in the plan, we identify needs, resources, partnerships, and leaders, Conservancy being a very important leader. As the plan, much of it will be accomplished by others. So today I'll just give an overview of the project as well as our adaptation strategies. And yeah, would love any feedback on clarity or questions as we get close to having a draft. So just a quick overview of the findings of phase one, which was our vulnerability assessment. It's like began in 2018, wrapped up in 2021, and that was where our team really looked at assets and systems that are most at risk from climate change. And we found many things. As we probably all know in this room, flood risk is one of the most pressing threats to the Delta. It will continue to worsen in the future with changing sea levels, precipitation, hydrology, and temperatures, and that these impacts will impact all Delta residents equally. The central and the southern Delta will be impacted the most. The second thing is the Delta water exports will continue to be less reliable in the future with climate change. The existing water supply system doesn't provide enough storage to capture anticipated increases in runoff due to poor variable precipitation. In terms of water quality, in Delta, water uses may be threatened with episodic water quality declines, with future droughts potentially exposing more acres of Delta agriculture to saline water, more than has been historically occurring. And Delta ecosystems are vulnerable to climate impacts as well. And then for Delta agriculture, production trends we expect to shift with climate change, increasing temperatures, and the number of extreme heat days are also projected to impact yields and crop quality. And then lastly, our team looked at the number of extreme heat days that are expected to increase Delta-wide, and the communities that we found that are most vulnerable to extreme heat are specifically in Stockton and Tracy. So building from all of the findings in our vulnerability assessment, we began phase two, which is the development of the adaptation plan that we're very close to having a public draft of. That really includes a range of actions to improve our regional resilience to climate change. So for this, we leaned heavily on input from a wide range of interests throughout the Delta. We've been working in 4 focus areas: agriculture, flood risk reduction, ecosystem, and water supply, and really integrating equity considerations throughout. Our engagement began in 2021. We co-hosted a workshop series with several community organizations in one of our most socially vulnerable communities to climate impacts in Stockton. And we also continue to work with a lot of those community organizations in Stockton and other areas through the council's environmental and tribal justice work. We contract with a small group of environmental justice experts, and then also through several council hosted forums and meetings and events. Another really important piece of our outreach that you'll see here is reaching out to and hearing directly from Delta farmers and growers. This was really a first, I think, for the council. So a lot of new relationships. We partnered with the Department of Food and Agriculture to host a series of group interviews with growers around the Delta to really hear what challenges they're grappling with, how they're adapting, and what they need to further adapt. We held a series of meetings with technical focus groups in each of those focus areas I mentioned. We also had an interdisciplinary stakeholder work group that would come together like in between those focus group series, and your staff participated in those. We were able to incorporate several tribal consultations into the forthcoming plan, what we heard from those, and then lots of meetings with like other state, local flood and water agencies. Your staff has also participated, as was mentioned before, in a lot of forums that the council has co-hosted on topics related to adaptive management, salinity management, restoration. And then finally, with the recent completion of the Delta residents survey, we really learned a lot about how Delta residents feel about various climate risks and adaptation options. So that has also been a really interesting component to inform how we write this plan. So now we are at the stage where we're really proposing a set of adaptation strategies across these focus areas, both physical and management level actions that will really be realized differently depending on the specific location of the Delta. A focus here is ensuring equity in decision making, maintaining flexibility to incorporate new data as it becomes available, and really prioritizing projects that offer multiple benefits. So just about a little bit about the strategies, and then I'll walk through the overview. Each strategy, we've assigned like a lead entity according to who it makes sense to lead. At the Conservancy, we've assigned a lead for a few. We highlight also strategies that we feel are really like near-term priorities that either there's not as much funding is needed to really make them happen right now, and that they also need to happen like sooner rather than later. We also worked to identify costs for large adaptation projects and also potential financing mechanisms. We note where certain strategies or components of strategies are called out already in our Delta plan, and how in other state and regional and resource specific plans, and how we need to continue that or go further. We do this also by including several case studies that illustrate types of projects we want to see moving forward. And we also lastly discuss at some level the trade-offs that are just inherent in some strategies. So I haven't really said it yet, but we don't have our draft out yet, but we're hoping to start public comment period this spring. And then a note on equity. I said a little bit earlier that we've really been doing our best to incorporate equity throughout all of our strategies. Our ongoing environmental and tribal justice work has really informed a large component of how equity appears in our draft plan. I just wanted to touch on a few of the ways that it's embedded throughout. And the first is representational justice. So many of our proposed actions, or if not all, it's increasingly important to really work to have decisions and decision-making bodies represent the communities that are served. So this means ensuring communities most impacted are informed, represented, and involved in the process. So this is really highlighting the need to partner with community groups tribes on projects, building trust early and having sustained interactions. Prioritization of investments. So this is really thinking about who considers the most risk and who needs investment the most. That can be in many topic areas, and things like increasing access to green space. So thinking about areas with the least, particularly some of our urban communities in the Delta, where there's less tree cover, less green cover, more impervious surfaces, and more risk at being subject to extreme heat events. It also includes flood risk and thinking about levee investments and flood resilience, and recognizing that those areas with high flood risk often have low flood insurance, often low access to housing, and just additional challenges with evacuation, as many areas in the Delta have. And then also thinking about like small water systems and the need to support those in the Delta. And the last is, it really this came up across the board, but the need to amplify our efforts on risk communication and education, particularly to those that are the most socially vulnerable to climate impacts. So this came up across the board for all topics. Okay, so to our first focus area, the flood risk reduction. This area has a lot of interest in the Delta, and we've made substantial progress in our investment in levees and other work, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Here you'll just see, this is just the kind of a summary of what we found from the vulnerability assessment on the left, a quick overview of some of our strategies, and then some example action. That's sort of how the plan is laid out. So we know for flood risk that climate change is affecting really the whole system. So riverine inflows, tides, storm surge, flood control and water supply operations. And that our strategies really aim to recognize what's been done, but outline what's needed to further address climate impacts and hydrological variability. So a note on the Delta plan for flood risk, and really for all 4 of our focus areas, it has the foundation for adaptation, and we're building on what's already there. So we have policies in our plan that address guiding investments in levees, and emphasizing emergency response and preparedness needs, supporting policies related to supporting flood management, related to levees and land use decisions, and then also policies related to curbing development to minimize conflicts and flood risk. But our strategies really start with improving our collective understanding of flood dynamics in the Delta and really how they interact with climate change, floodplain management, subsidence, and community vulnerability. And so the first action example here is to integrate climate change specifically into risk assessment models. So the lead for this strategy is the Stewardship Council, and then we have several partners, but I think for sake of time, I won't go into them. But for every strategy, there's a lot of partners listed as well. There's another strategy that looks at really the Delta levees investment strategy. And an action here is to focus on integrating climate risks and equity into that strategy. The lead for this one is the Department of Water Resources. And an example of a non-structural measure is really to raise awareness about the importance of flood insurance. So the lead here would be both Department of Water Resources and California Office of Emergency Services. Okay, so our next strategy area is our ecosystem strategies. We, I think all in this room understand really the value of the Delta ecosystems for habitat, refugia, migratory pathways, and really also the value of natural systems for buffering impacts to climate change. We learned from the vulnerability assessment phase that our ecosystems will continue to be stressed and have little room to migrate due to land use and physical constraints such as levees, and also really that all of our delta tidal wetlands are at risk of drowning due to sea level rise. And just impediments from elevation for migration. So the ecosystem strategies really start with aiming to strengthen the ability of our ecosystems to adapt. We really start with focusing on restoring and connecting habitats to meet the goals that are already in our Delta plan, protecting functional flows, halting and reversing land subsidence, protecting natives, and then enhancing our urban ecosystems. And a lot of this aligns with and builds on existing policies and recommendations in our Delta plan, particularly the 5 core strategies that were included in our 2022 amendment to Chapter 4 of our Delta plan. In the strategies, we really note to call out the co-benefits associated with restoration, which include reduced flood risk, improved water quality, and storage and attenuation of floodwaters, access to green space, as I mentioned before, and then particularly relevant for the Conservancy's work, subsidence halting and recognizing the reduced flood risk that can come from that, and greenhouse gas emissions sequestration. So just to highlight a few of the strategies, we highlight the need to really build broader partnerships, so working with and learning from tribes. And this, the Natural Resource Agency here is the lead. And then for protecting ecosystems by halting and reversing subsidence, the Conservancy is tagged as the lead here, and an example action in this strategy is just recognizing to incentivize land use types that halt or reverse subsidence. So, recognizing this would be different depending on like feasibility and ownership, but it could be restoration or also things like rice or selective planting based on island elevation. Okay, the next is our agriculture strategies. And agriculture, as we know, it will continue to be really a fundamental part of the Delta's history, culture, and economy, providing significant economic output to the region, diverse crops, and jobs to Delta communities. We know that agriculture is threatened by more variable precipitation, saltwater intrusion, water quality decline, flooding, extreme heat, and reduced chill hours, which is also compounded by stressors like subsidence, urban land use encroachment, wind erosion of soils, and levee seepage. So our agriculture strategies also build from what's already in the Delta plan. So we have Delta plan recommendations that encourage things like subsidence reversal, and recommendations for state agencies to work with and provide funding to agencies and districts to really adaptively manage agricultural lands. So our first strategy really is to build a sustainable and equitable regional food system. So the lead here is our partners at Department of Food and Agriculture. And some of the actions under that strategy are around like labor and workforce development, diversified farms, and really just working to improve local and affordable food access. Another strategy is to expand, this is very related to what the fish-friendly farming presentation was covering, but really expanding and adopting more implementation of climate smart farming practices across Delta Ag Land. So this is also our partners at CDFA, and a lot of the supporting practices are around irrigation efficiency, building soil health, increasing Delta farmer participation in a lot of the CDFA incentive programs, many of which were just mentioned. The next strategy is around like supporting diversification of income and revenue on operating ag land. So CDFA, again, the lead, and here a lot of actions are related to like agritourism, cultural opportunities, funding and supporting environmental credits like carbon credits or wildlife friendly farming incentives. And then the last strategy is to cooperatively identify strategic agriculture land retirement opportunities where other land uses would be of high value. So here the Conservancy is the lead, and this includes things like that we've been talking about already in terms of like wetland conversion, rice, and also other opportunities, like renewable energy or other things that can be on retired ag lands. Okay, the last focus area is water supply reliability. So the Delta watershed provides a portion of the water supply for approximately 27 million Californians and millions of acres of ag lands. But we know that the water supply will likely decrease while demand will increase due to extreme heat, variable precipitation, snowpack changes, sea level rise. And the infrastructure that supports our water supply is also at risk from impacts from climate. So like I mentioned with all of the other focus areas, our strategies build from and go beyond what's already in the Delta plan. So we have a Delta plan policy that requires water suppliers to reduce reliance on the Delta through improved regional self-reliance. Our Delta Reform Act, which created the council, describes conveyance facilities as contributing to water supply reliability. And also in 2018, we amended the Delta plan to include an update that promotes options for conveyance, storage, and operations. So that amendment endorsed a form of dual conveyance, but doesn't specify really what this entails or like endorses a specific project. So with that in mind, we have 5 strategies, and I'll go through a few example actions. The first is to reduce reliance on the Delta. So this is through improving regional self-reliance and conservation and development of local water supplies. So the lead here are water suppliers and utilities, and there's several supporting actions related to funding pilot projects that promote like urban and ag water conservation using recycled water, coordinating with local and regional agencies for things like inter-basin groundwater budgets. We have a strategy on increasing local storage of surface and groundwater supplies, both north and south of the Delta. Water suppliers are also the lead here. And we have actions around streamlining processes for private landowners to use their fields for groundwater recharge, or investing in things like flood managed aquifer recharge. Our next strategy is around reservoir operations and making sure they are adaptable to changing climate conditions. So the lead here are reservoir operators in general, and then including actions like modifying flood control curves that consider climate variability, reviewing and improving existing models that inform all reservoir operations. The next is around water quality standards. So reviewing those and including like climate informed objectives that account for agricultural uses, fishing, recreational, tribal, and other beneficial uses of water. So the lead here is the State Water Resources Control Board, and there's several supporting actions that include continuing work related to harmful algal blooms, methods for monitoring and reporting water diversions, and others. And then the last is around the water infrastructure itself. So really improving or modifying the infrastructure to minimize impacts on through Delta conveyance. The lead here is the Department of Water Resources. And there's several actions related to both the freshwater pathway and levees, several others. Okay, so I just wanted to touch briefly on sort of like a work in progress piece around really the cost of some of these types of adaptation projects, and just pulling from how these have been historically funded in the Delta, and really like addressing kind of what we need to move adaptation forward. So for costing, we focused on restoration and levee improvements through 2050, according to the work that was done in our vulnerability assessment. And this is partially because these are really some of the primary sources associated with like capital costs for implementing our strategies, and also kind of just like it focuses on really like where the Stewardship Council works. So we do recognize there are costs associated with water supply projects and agriculture, but that was less of a focus just for this costing like exercise. So the levy costs that our staff quantified focus on raising the crest to accommodate water level increases, but doesn't include bringing existing levies to standards because that's just assumed that would be done. And then restoration costs include like planning, design, permitting, and construction. So you can, the scale of funding, really the take home is that it's greater than what has historically been allocated to the Delta, and that there really is like a gap between our existing sources and the funding needs that will need to be filled through expanding existing sources, through like general obligation bonds or federal spending, or new other financing mechanisms. So we've tried to do that in a few different ways by looking at like potential sources for new federal climate spending for the Delta. We also applied results from a recent study in the Bay Area from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Association of Bay Area Governments, which looked at a parcel tax rate of like 25 to 50 per parcel. And that's been, in terms of taxes, like a little bit more politically acceptable. So this was just like an exercise to see like how far we could potentially get. Okay. So anyway, the take home was basically that we need to be innovative and more coordinated on how to fill a funding gap for adaptation. I think I need to wrap up, but I'll just say the plan has some other chapters beyond the strategies, one of which is just governance needs. This figure was done by a Delta Science Fellow at UC Davis that shows how like climate collaboratives are related, and it just is interesting to see that Delta Adapts connects a lot of different group adaptation practitioners in the region. These are some of the governance recommendations that you'll see in the plan related to like procedural justice and incorporating folks better in the planning process, making sure we have adaptive management built in and acknowledging the need to explore inroads for traditional knowledge in Delta science and decision making. And then these are just some of the ways that we see the council having a specific role in the beginning of implementation. Someone mentioned DPIC earlier, so that's hopefully a vehicle that we're hoping we can continue to explore like a regional funding strategy for adaptation. And yeah, next steps were, as I said, we're very close to having a public draft. And yeah, would love folks' input during that period. And then we're hoping to have a final plan sometime this summer. Sorry for taking a long time, but yeah, that's all for me, and I'm happy to take questions if there's any.
Any questions in the room? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can you talk about the process for choosing lead agencies? Were folks voluntold, or I mean, what?
Yeah.
Because you don't have the council doesn't have the authority, right?
Right.
To go tell
DWR
raise all
right.
the levy.
So yeah, nothing, well, first of all, like nothing in the plan is like, there's no regulatory component of the plan. But yeah, we have met with DWR staff, at least in terms of like and letting them know this was our thought.
So folks are aware.
But yes, all of the lead agencies are aware that they've been assigned or voluntold. And that they've actually seen like the draft content, and we've met with them. Yeah, but
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Any questions online?
I just want to add, there's also the component of, once this is kind of more formed, working with BCDC on the Bay Delta or Bay Area sea level rise. That way everything's kind of where I represent, there's that kind of meeting. And so I'm really interested to see how those two plans kind of come together. So just wanted to mention that.
yeah, that's a really good point.
Speaking of where plans come together, I have some questions around that. One is with the State Water Resources Board and the commission's, or the council's position on the State Water Resources Board's, water quality and flows initiative that they're considering right now, that would greatly impact my region, where they're talking about, increasing flows of up to 75% in the Solano County watershed, meaning that Lake Berryessa would be drained by 2/3 down to its original flow that went through Pewter Creek. And I was just curious about the position of the council on that.
Yeah, I know that our staff are closely following it. I'm not as engaged, but I think we're following it and tracking it, and it would, I think like that decision will ultimately.
The track, then it's not, the council's not gonna have any direct input into that with the water.
I know that our staff were meeting with them, but I individually am not, so I could definitely follow up.
I would appreciate it if I could get a position statement from them on that.
Okay, yeah, I'll ask.
All right, and then second was with MTC. You talked about MTC and potentially finding a funding gap through the parcel tax that MTC is considering. I know that parcel tax is also being considered to fund BART and Muni Transit and a lot of other things. And I'm just curious how the Delta Stewardship Council fits into that, because I know that money is accounted for, right? I mean, they're gonna use that money and then some extra money on top of that to try and fix BART. So there are instances at the state and county level and where we spend money 2 and 3 times over, or it's accounted for in 2 or 3 different places. Everybody claims a little bit of it, but you aren't really getting it all. I see the Department of Finance down there nodding, said, yeah, that happens. So I'm just curious, do they have a different funding source in mind? Because I don't see MTC giving this up for any Delta levy stuff or protection down there when, you know, they can't get BART fixed.
Right, so yeah, I'll just clarify that, the parcel tax study was, it's sort of in terms of like what, Supervisor Berger said about like parallel initiatives, like, BCDC is leading a lot of, planning related to sea level rise and adaptation, and they're a little bit farther, I think, than we are in terms of like doing a study to understand like, well, where can we raise money to do a lot of this like regional adaptation. So part of the study that they did for how to fund adaptation in the Bay was looking at like feasibility, and parcel tax was an option, but they're not, I don't know that, like, I know that what you're saying about BART is one like pot of funds that they always need money for, but I don't know that parcel tax is actually going like towards adaptation yet. But for our purposes, it was more just like, this is one revenue generating mechanism of many that has like a little bit more political feasibility from what we've seen, but there isn't anything like that is dedicated to
Okay.
the Delta at this
Just
point.
checking.
Sorry.
As a guy who owns a couple parcels down there, it makes me nervous.
You're
when
like,
people start talking about adding taxes on.
It's just, yeah,
Saying,
Yeah.
Okay,
it's just illustrative.
those were my only questions. Sure.
I guess one question is, so I appreciate the graphic about the funding needs and sort of existing versus the gap and stuff like that. Does the plan, as it goes through detail, sort of touch on which strategies and actions can be supported by existing fund sources and sort of what can be accomplished with those versus which ones are sort of held up by existing funding or funding gaps?
Yeah, that's what we tried to do with some of like the near term priorities that I mentioned very briefly, like so throughout the action list, we sort of highlight the ones that like, oh, we feel these need to be done now and they don't require like funding that doesn't exist. So we do try and separate that some.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions in the room or online? I don't see any. All right. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
That brings us to our Delta Stewardship Council update.
Oh, that's me. No, sorry.
You just thought you were on the hook.
Yeah, it's very short. So Gail Miller has joined our council. She's our newest gubernatorial appointee. Virginia Medway's departure, we're currently without a chair, but we're holding a special council meeting on April 12th to elect a new chair. And then the other piece is that the next Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee gathering is April 18th in Stockton. And as I think Campbell mentioned a little bit earlier, but DPIC brings together 18 state and federal agencies with a role in implementing our Delta Plan. The Conservancy and Commission are both members. Supervisor Diane Burgess will be chairing the meeting. We'll start with a tour hosted by Little Manila Rising. It's a community organization that we work very closely with to learn more about environmental justice issues in Stockton. The meeting will also include a discussion about cyanobacterial harmful algal blooms monitoring strategy and an update on the DPIC restoration subcommittee, which the Conservancy's Rachel Wigginton will be providing. Everyone's welcome to attend the site tour and the meeting. That's all.
Any questions from anybody? Or online? Seeing none? That brings us to our EcoRestore update.
Hi, good morning. Morning. Everyone, I'm Charlotte Biggs with the Department of Water Resources. Thanks for having me. I'm going to provide a quick update on DWR's habitat restoration and multi-benefit projects in the Delta. Today, I'm going to highlight 4 efforts that are moving forward or reaching some milestones this year. So the first is the Grizzly Slough Floodplain Restoration Project. This effort is within the Consumnes River Preserve in Sacramento County. It will restore approximately 400 acres of habitat, including 200 acres of floodplain habitat and about 150 acres of wildlife-friendly agriculture. This project is being implemented through the Reclamation District, so that's RD 348. With support from DWR and the Delta Conservancy. So big thank you to the Delta Conservancy for your support for this project. We've completed all of our environmental documentation and permits, and we will be starting construction of the new setback levee and other features, we hope May 1st. So very exciting. We are planning a get together of some kind, probably not a real groundbreaking, but something before it gets too hot. Or we'll have to wait and do it more like back down. So you all will be on the invite list when we get that together. The second effort I wanted to highlight is the McCormick-Williamson Tract Habitat Restoration Project, also within the Consumnes River Preserve in Sacramento County. That's also being led by the local Reclamation District with support from DWR. This project has been a long time coming. I was happy to see Leo here because he's been wondering about updates on this project for the last 10 years or so. We have good news today. We are gearing up to start construction this year on the second phase, the full phase of the project. We had some major challenges to overcome to get here. Last January, the site actually overtopped unexpectedly from the McComey River, and the site has been inundated since. So we really had to adjust our plans. We were hoping to start construction last year. So we went back and modified our design a bit. We released an addendum to our EIR at the end of last year, analyzing those changes. There was a little bit of good news. It saved us a little bit of costs because we are going to eliminate some of the interior features, but the breaches, we're cleaning up the breaches and we'll still have a lot of function and habitat to the site. So we're really excited about that. And then the other thing I want to share is that we did execute an agreement with East Bay Mud to do monitoring on the site. So once we're completed with construction, East Bay Mud will be helping us with monitoring long-term on that site. So we are completing our permits and hope to start construction on this site in May. The get together I mentioned on Grizzly Slough might be a twofer to celebrate the project. It is not a great place to go out and actually have people join. So we're going to try and do something. So those are the sites starting construction this year. I also wanted to highlight our Lookout Slough tidal and flood improvement project. This is our largest tidal wetland restoration project in the Delta. It's over 3,000 acres, and we are entering our 3rd and final year of construction on this effort. Hopefully starting in April with our permits will allow us to start work. So this year, we will be tying in the new setback levy. So the new setback levy is complete. We'll be tying that in and having that inspected by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to sign off on it. And then we will be breaching the existing Shag Slough levee in 9 locations that we've already installed cofferdams and are ready to go. We're working closely with the county, Solano County, to work on our last approvals to move this project forward and hopefully close the road for safety issues before we do this last bit of work. So we will plan to begin this breaching in August. So that's when our permits allow us to do in-water work. And again, we will have some type of completion or breaching ceremony out on the site this fall that hope to invite you all to attend. The last effort I wanted to highlight is one that's in planning, that's moving forward. So this is the Little Egbert Tract proposed project. This is a proposed multi-benefit flood, habitat, and recreation project that's also within Solano County, just north of Rio Vista and the southern Yolo bypass. Another very large effort, it's over 3,000 acres. DWR is the CEQA lead agency. So we are working hard to advance this effort through CEQA. Our current priorities are conducting biological and cultural resources surveys on the site, and we're working towards a draft EIR later this year. So our design team is continuing to advance modeling to support the CEQA analysis and looking at different alternatives. And then we are planning some upcoming public presentations on this project to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board and others this summer. So you might be hearing more about this project in more detail over the summer. So that was all that I had planned to share, but happy to take any questions on these projects or anything else.
Just a comment on McCormick Williamson. When it flooded, when the levee breached last year and it flooded, I took a kayak in there and I thought it was perfect. So I thought that God. Yeah.
It's all good.
Any other questions or comments from anybody online? Oh, yes, ma'am.
What was the acreage for Little Egbert?
Yeah, the site itself is over 3,000 acres. So depending on which alternative, we're still kind of figuring out what the habitat will look like, but it's a big one.
Great, thank you.
Sure, McCormick Williams, so there's no need to do any draining. You're just
That's right.
cleaning up the breaches. And
Yep.
Great.
We're not dewatering, so that would have been a big expense.
And then my other question, we keep referring to this update as the EcoRestore update. Should we update that to the DWR multi-benefit program?
So yeah, we've gone a bit past EcoRestore. Yeah, but yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Formally, what would that be?
DWR's multi-benefit and restoration efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That brings us to our Delta Protection Commission.
Anybody online from DPC?
Everybody from DPC.
I am.
Janet Barbieri should be online.
Well, that's
Oh,
for the next
yes, that's for Delta Conveyance.
Oh, for Protection Commission, sorry. Switching letters around.
Diane, did you want to say anything for DPC? I know that I think Bruce is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't, they didn't give me any, anything to, provide. So I
will grab some.
Thank you.
She's next, but.
All right. Well, then we will move down to the Delta Conveyance update.
Okay, thank you and good morning, everyone. Just a couple of really quick things to update you on. One is that we did submit our petition to the State Water Board for the change in point of diversion. That was on February 22nd. And then the State Board issued their public notice about that on February 29th. I also wanted to mention that we're continuing to work on a new cost estimate and benefit cost analysis. And then lastly, that we will have an updated implementation plan and sort of guidelines document related to the proposed community benefits program, and that will be available sometime in the summer. So those are the three things I had to update you on, and I just wanted to say thank you again for the chance to update you. And normally Carrie Buckman would be here, but she's on leave this week, so I'm stepping in for her, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from anybody in the room? Seeing none, anybody online? See any there either. Thank you very much, ma'am. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we're on to you're up. Any
Yeah.
potential items?
Potential items for the May 22nd. It's an opportunity to hear from the board about other items that they might want to hear us cover. Right now, we're anticipating amendments, awards, as they might move through for either the ecosystem restoration program or the community enhancement program. But as we mentioned earlier, we will do a deep dive on the web tract project. Really look more closely at the progress it's making, but also the CEQA compliance and the secondary authorizations that the board needs to do to authorize funding to move forward. This will be a deep dive. That we'll do. Open to any other suggestions.
I'm good with anything to get this out of the office. I mean, May is springtime and it's the field trip time, you know, so if you guys got a piece of the Delta you want to see it in the spring or see it in the fall. But for me, it's more fun to see it in the spring.
I second that motion.
Well, you know, we got some projects, the DWR is doing over in my county, you know, if we want to go, y'all want to go hike around a little bit on a levee. And see the breaches before they breach them, or, you know, I'm just looking over there to see if there's, yeah. And there were some questions about Little Egbert. If you want to see what it looks like now, we can do some before and after touring. Any of those things, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Yep.
Get everybody in a
Those are
bus.
projects
Take
that
them
we
out.
funded, but they'll still be representative.
It's representative of Delta and there's going to be potential in the future for partnership on things out there, I think.
I mean, we're always open. I think, Sarah, did you want to comment or?
Yeah, just about the site visits. We are planning a site visit in July for one of the drip sites where we have the eco-variant stations and monitoring the drip program. So I know July is warm, but we wanted to tie that up with the drip report out that our staff are going to be doing in July. So
I'm okay with that. I'm out there on that levee, those levees all the time. I'm trying to get you all out on a field trip. I'm just saying. Sometimes it's more fun to have these meetings out there. All right. That brings us to one last shot at public comment. If anybody's got anything for the good of the order, online or in the room, no? All right. Then we're adjourned. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
We got 10:36. Ooh.